What's up, guys? This is Connor, and today I'm going to show you how to put an air layer on a guava tree. Now, air layering is a technique used to propagate a new tree from an existing tree, like this guava behind me, where you take a branch, you strip the bark off, and you allow new roots to form, and then eventually you cut that branch off and you have a new guava tree. So let's get to it. Okay, I've got all my materials laid out. We've got some peat moss that I already soaked, aluminum foil, plastic wrap, rooting hormone, razor blade, pruners, and these zip ties are what I'm going to use to secure the plastic wrap. So that's all you need. Okay, so here's the guava tree in question, and this is the branch that I'm going to air layer, specifically because it's actually girdling this other thicker trunk, and so instead of just removing it, I figured it was a good excuse to put an air layer on it. So I'm not going to be able to film this as I do it, so I'll try to get a decent camera angle to show you guys how I'm doing it. Okay, so to start the air layer, first thing we've got to do is prune off some of these leaves, which I'll just do by hand, I guess. So the air layer is going to go right about here. So I'm going to take this branch off behind it, since that won't be needed. Okay, strip a couple more leaves off. So the air layer is going to go right there. Okay, so the first important thing to do is take the razor blade, and you want to take off a ring of bark that's about 1.5 to 2 times wider than the width of the actual branch itself. So I'm going to start right here, and I'm just going to take the razor blade and go around till I connect, and then I'll go about right here and do the same thing. And then I'm going to cut lengthwise so I can pull the bark off. Try not to cut any fingers while you do this. So as you can see, I cut a ring right there, and then I've connected them with this. Let's see if I can show you this while filming. Yeah, there you go. You should be able to just peel the bark right off from that area. Missed a piece. Okay, so that's what you're aiming for, is a ring of bark completely removed, exposed, and looking like that. Okay, so the reason that we remove the bark is to stop the flow of sap from the top part of this branch to the rest of the tree, which will cause this to callus up and send out hormones to create roots where the cambium layer is exposed. The cambium is a thin layer just below the bark, which we've also stripped off as well. So right here and at the bottom, the cambium is exposed. The next thing I'm going to do is just remove a couple more leaves so we have some room to work with here. Basically everything up until this next branching. clean it up a little bit. Okay, so the next thing you want to do is take your rooting hormone and you're gonna want to just brush it all over the exposed branch right here, and I'm just gonna do this with my finger. It would be a little easier if it was wet, but it's all good. It's getting where it needs to go. That's probably enough. A little bit of this stuff goes a long way. Okay, so now we're ready to apply the peat moss and wrap it up. Okay, so this is our pre-soaked peat moss. You don't want it to be soaking wet, so I'm gonna squeeze some water out a little bit before I put it on there. But and this part is also not going to be even possible to do with one hand, so you're gonna have to bear with me with the far away angle. But I'll give you a close-up after it's on there so you can see what's going on. Okay, so this is where the plastic wrap comes in. What you need to do is get yourself a piece of the plastic wrap, and try not to let it stick to itself, because that just makes things difficult. And it's a little windy, so this is kind of a pain in the ass. Okay. So I've spread out plastic wrap, and I'm just going to put a good handful of peat moss on there. Maybe a little bit less. Like so. And then spread this out a little bit. And then all you need to do, and this is the tricky part, is just keeping the plastic wrap all even, which I'm already screwing up. 1 second, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. Now, what you want to do is just apply that peat moss ball and just wrap it. Oh, I'm losing some. That's fine. Plastic wrap just doesn't really like to cooperate under these circumstances, but that's fine. We'll force it to. Okay, here we go. So we've got our ball of peat moss, and we're gonna just carefully make sure it gets wrapped completely around where we cut the bark off. And as neatly as possible, just try to wrap that around and make it tight. Not too tight, but tight enough because you want to keep the moisture in there while this thing is rooting out. Try to make sure there's no open gaps where it'll dry out. And I think what I'm going to do actually to make this easier is just put another layer of plastic wrap around this so it can kind of stick to itself. Get the air out of there as much as you can. It's gonna need to breathe a little bit, but you want it to be tight and dark and keep the moisture in. Okay. So I'm just kind of centering it around the area where we cut the branch, and hopefully that holds on to itself for just a second. Wrap it a little tighter. This extra layer is just to get it a little bit more sturdy on there. And then we'll secure it. I'm gonna use plastic zip ties for this. You could use tape or twine or whatever you've got laying around, but zip ties are what I've got. So I'm gonna take these and just put one around the top and the bottom. Make them as tight as they need to be. Hold that on. I'm just gonna cut those tips off and show you what we've got so far. So here's our peat moss ball secured and wrapped onto the branch. It's pretty tight. It's got a little bit of air in there, but it's definitely going to hold the water in, which is what you need for the roots to form. So now the next step is to wrap it in aluminum foil, which will protect it from the sun, and also we don't want this to accidentally break or like get pecked at by a bird or something, which will let it dry out. So I'm going to wrap it in aluminum foil just as a final step. Okay, how's that for a better angle? That's what I should have used the entire time. Now you can see it a little bit better. Okay, so we take our little piece of aluminum foil and just wrap it around. Keep it nice and dark in there. And protected. So there you go. That is our finished air layer. Looks pretty good to me. I'm actually gonna cut the top off of this branch because this is a very long branch already. So I'm gonna have to cut it by the time this is rooted and ready to remove anyway. So I'm gonna head back the top of the branch a little bit, and then we'll do some more pruning when it's done rooting, just to help with the transplant shock a little bit. And I'm gonna make a follow-up video when this is done. So guavas, from what I've read, will actually root from an air layer relatively quickly, somewhere in the range of 3 to 4 weeks. Some other trees can take months, and like 6 months for some species, but guavas are supposed to be pretty quick and reliable. So I'm gonna let this sit for about a month. Today is May 2nd, so we'll be checking back in around the beginning of June, and we'll take this off and see how our roots are forming in there, and hopefully we'll have a healthy new guava tree, and I'll take you guys along for that. But for now, that is the beginning steps to air layering your guava tree. Just wanted to give you one more look from a different angle at this tree. So here's the branch. that's a little too close to this other one. I'm gonna follow it up a little bit. And here's the air layer, which will hopefully be a success. And then this branch keeps going pretty far. I just cut the top off this one because it was a little too big, but it's gonna have to be pruned back quite a bit once we pot up the air layer, just to reduce the amount of transpiration so this tree can actually start rooting out its pot and start growing. But that's it. It's a pretty simple process. It just takes a little bit of prep and just being careful. But in a month from now, it should have taken care of itself, and we'll see.